Before Lucifer's pride split the heavens, there was only harmony, light flowing from the throne like living fire. Around it, countless beings sang one name. Yet amid that perfect worship, a question burned unspoken. Where was the sun when heaven trembled? When the first shadow rose among the stars, when beauty turned to envy, and the guardian of glory lifted his wings against his own creator, was Jesus watching, fighting, commanding? Or was he doing something far more mysterious? Before swords of flame clashed and eternity shuddered, the Word stood where only God can stand, within the calm, at the center of the storm. This is where we find him, during Lucifer's rebellion. Before time took its first breath, before the concept of beginning or end could be spoken, existence itself was harmony. Eternity was not a vast emptiness, but a living radiance, a sea of unbroken light flowing from the throne of the Almighty. In that eternal expanse, there was no shadow, no distance between glory and creation, for all things pulsed with the rhythm of divine perfection. At the center of that infinite brilliance stood the throne of God, a mystery of fire and light. And beside it, sharing the same eternal essence, was the Word, the Son, Jesus Christ, co-equal with the Father, the image of the invisible God. The Word was not born, for he was eternal as the light itself, the expression of divine thought, the living power through whom all things would one day exist. Around the throne, multitudes beyond number moved in flawless choreography, a celestial order governed not by command, but by love. The cherubim spread their wings like living gold, eyes within and without, beholding glory without weariness. The seraphim burned with holy fire, singing ceaselessly, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory, though the earth did not yet exist." Their song was not a sound carried on air, for air itself had not been formed. It was the resonance of being itself, the vibration of existence praising its source. Each being knew its place within the divine harmony, not as limitation but as purpose, finding joy in reflecting the light that sustained them. The throne was surrounded by an ocean of glass mingled with fire, a mirror of eternity where the intentions of God shimmered like unspoken prophecies. Nothing yet had fallen, nothing yet had questioned, for all that was made was perfect, flowing with the same current of will that emanated from the Father and the Son. The Word's presence filled the heavens with a peace so complete that even silence was a form of worship. He moved not with steps but with purpose, his gaze containing the knowledge of all that would be. The angels bowed as he passed, not in fear but in recognition of the love that gave them life. To them, he was not a distant deity, but the radiant center of their existence, the one whose voice was the melody of creation itself. Light and order were his language, and the heavens answered in harmony. It was the dawn that had no sunrise, the eternity before the ticking of the first moment. No discord had ever stirred the still waters of divine peace. No will had ever diverged from the divine will. Every being was a reflection of God's nature, each flame of consciousness perfectly tuned to the infinite source. And at the heart of this radiant expanse, the Son stood as the eternal architect, gazing into the depths of the Father's glory, knowing that soon he would speak, and that one word would ignite existence itself. From the heart of divine light, where the fire of holiness burns without consuming, the Word brought forth a being unlike any other. Among the countless hosts of heaven, there would be one who embodied the fullness of beauty, wisdom, and strength, a mirror to reflect the splendor of his Maker. And so, by the voice of Jesus, the eternal Word, Lucifer came into existence. His name meant light-bearer, for he was born of radiance itself. Every stone that adorned creation found its likeness upon him: sardius, topaz, diamond, onyx, jasper, sapphire, emerald, and gold intertwined with divine craftsmanship. His form shimmered with living color, as though light had taken shape and learned to move. Music flowed through his being. His very breath was harmony, and his steps were melody. When he walked among the fiery stones near the throne, the heavens trembled in awe, for the brilliance that covered him seemed almost an extension of the throne's own fire. He stood nearest to the presence that no other creature could approach, wings outstretched to cover the glory, eyes beholding mysteries too deep for words. His mind was a treasury of divine wisdom, his heart a vessel of worship, his every movement an act of adoration. The angels gazed upon him and saw the masterpiece of God's creative will, a creature so radiant that even the seraphim, burning with their eternal flame, bowed in reverence as he passed. Yet, beneath this flawless design, woven into his perfection, was something invisible and essential: freedom. For Jesus did not create slaves of light, but sons of obedience, beings capable of love and therefore capable of choice. In Lucifer, freedom reached its most dangerous height. The greater his beauty, the greater his responsibility. The nearer his position to the throne, the greater the weight of his will. He was the guardian of holiness, the living veil that shielded the uncreated fire, the one entrusted to preserve the harmony of heaven's order. And the Word rejoiced in him. For through Lucifer's service, the throne's glory would resound throughout creation once it came into being. All the angels watched as the anointed cherub began his eternal ministry, the music of his wings filling the courts of heaven. No thought of rebellion existed then, no shadow in his heart. He loved his Creator with flawless devotion, knowing that his existence was a reflection of the Son's own power and artistry. But even as the eternal Word looked upon his creation and called it good, he knew the peril embedded within perfection, that love, to be true, must be free. And so, as the light-bearer walked among the stones of fire, adored and exalted among his peers, the Creator saw beyond beauty and brilliance. He saw the untested will, the freedom yet untouched by choice, and in his infinite foresight, he knew that within the heart of this radiant guardian lay the seed of possibility, the power to love without compulsion, or to turn that same love inward. And that seed, once awakened, would shake the heavens themselves. Ages passed in the timeless realm where no sun rose or set, and in that eternity of light, the anointed cherub continued his ministry with flawless grace. His wings shimmered with holy fire, his voice wove harmonies that caused even the stars to tremble in reverence, and all heaven moved in rhythm to his worship. Yet slowly, imperceptibly, something began to shift within the heart of the one called the Light-Bearer. What began as admiration for the glory he reflected became curiosity, and curiosity matured into contemplation. The radiance that once filled him from the throne now became a mirror he could not look away from. He gazed upon the brightness of his own form and saw beauty that rivaled the dawn, wisdom that surpassed the knowledge of all other angels, and power that seemed boundless. The reflection in his being, once a testimony to the Creator's splendor, began to whisper its own name back to him. The songs he led in worship once drew the gaze of multitudes toward the throne. Now, he began to notice how many eyes lingered on him instead. And though no sin yet existed in heaven, a new thought formed, small, delicate, like a spark in the void. Why must I bow? He had walked among the stones of fire nearer to the throne than any created being, his wings covering the very presence of God. He had seen the mysteries of divine light, heard the conversations of eternity, and felt the pulse of the Word's glory. The difference between Creator and creation seemed to blur before his prideful gaze. If I carry the reflection of the sun's brilliance, he thought, why should I not share his throne? It was not a rebellion yet, only a thought so foreign to heaven that it rippled through the fabric of perfection. None could hear it, none could perceive it, but the one who knew the thoughts of every heart, the Word who had formed him, saw the first tremor of corruption take shape, the moment when love began to curl inward into vanity. And yet, even then, no punishment came, no voice thundered against him. For freedom was still sacred, even when it turned against the giver. Lucifer continued to serve, to sing, to cover the throne, but worship had subtly changed its direction. His songs grew sweeter, more ornate, no longer rising from pure adoration but from the desire to be adored. He began to measure himself against the one whose glory he once reflected. The fire around him no longer burned as warmth, it burned as envy. In a realm where nothing had ever fallen, the first shadow was born, invisible yet real. Pride had taken its first breath in the heart of heaven, and though no angel yet knew it, the harmony of eternity had been wounded. The first thought of separation had entered the universe, and from that fragile spark, an inferno would one day arise. The Word who had spoken existence into being beheld the quiet turmoil forming in his most radiant creation. Nothing in heaven escaped his knowledge. Every flicker of thought, every movement of will lay open before his eternal sight. He saw the subtle bending of light within Lucifer's soul, the inward curve of worship once pure now tinted with self-regard. He saw the thought that could not be spoken aloud, the echo that dared to compare creature with creator. Yet no command shattered the silence, no judgment fell from the throne. The Son, whose voice could unmake worlds, chose stillness. His gaze rested upon the anointed cherub, not with wrath, but with sorrow deeper than the oceans of eternity. For love, if it is to be true, must grant the right to refuse it. The very perfection of creation demanded the freedom to fracture. And so the Son, in infinite wisdom, let freedom run its course. The cherub still shone as if nothing had changed. He still sang, his music filling the heavens, his beauty undiminished. But to the Word. That song now carried a dissonant undertone, the first discordant note in eternity. Angels around the throne still bowed in reverence, unaware that one among them had begun to worship himself. The Son knew he could extinguish the corruption before it spread, could remove pride from existence with a word as easily as he had summoned light from darkness. Yet to do so would unmake the essence of love itself. If Lucifer were forced to serve, his worship would be hollow, his obedience an illusion. Love coerced would cease to be love and become servitude. Thus the Creator allowed the fire to burn, though he knew it would one day consume what he had made. His silence was not weakness but strength, beyond comprehension, the power to refrain when omnipotence could so easily command. He watched as the once perfect cherub stood among the fiery stones, his glory reflecting across the sea of glass. To all others, it was the same brilliance as before, but to the Son, it carried a fracture, a shadow hidden in the light. The Word remembered the moment he had formed this being, shaping each jewel and melody with purpose. He had known this day would come, known that love's highest gift would also be its greatest risk. Still, he had chosen to create, for even rebellion, when viewed through divine foresight, would one day serve redemption. So the Son remained silent, his eternal heart bearing what no creature could bear. The pain of watching his own handiwork tremble between loyalty and ruin. The heavens still sang, but now the song carried tension, an unseen strain running beneath the glory. And the Son, unmoved yet unyielding, let the melody play on, knowing that the music of free will must reach its dissonant note before the harmony of grace could ever be restored. From the seed of pride that once hid silently within his heart, Lucifer's thought began to take form, taking on substance and voice until it burned like living fire. Desire awoke within him, a hunger not for more glory from God, but for glory of his own. What had begun as self-admiration now whispered a question that refused to be silenced. Why should I, the bearer of light, remain forever beneath the one who made me? That question, born in darkness yet wrapped in brilliance, became a contagion of thought. The cherub's beauty, once the greatest reflection of the sun's majesty, became his weapon. He began to move among the hosts of heaven with a gentleness that masked his intent, his words like soft music carrying poison beneath their sweetness. "Brothers," he would say, "do you not see how all things revolve around the throne? Are we not also made of light? Do we not carry within us the breath of God himself? Why should one alone bear his likeness and fullness while we remain mere reflections?" The angels who listened could not discern the shadow hidden in his eloquence. To many his words seemed noble, a plea for greater understanding, for equality among those who served. He spoke of freedom as though it were worship, of self-realization as though it were faith. And as he spoke, something unseen spread through the courts of heaven, a subtle unrest, a wondering, a hesitation before every act of praise. Lucifer, the anointed guardian, now became the subtle accuser, not yet of mankind, but of God himself. "Why should the Son alone share the Father's glory?" he whispered to those nearest the throne. "Why must all things serve his word? Does not the Creator's power dwell in all who were made by him?" Each question was a spark falling upon hearts unguarded, and each spark found kindling in pride untested. The fire spread. One by one, legions began to waver, and the great harmony that had filled eternity trembled. Still, no war erupted yet. There was only dissonance, a fracture beneath the song. The angels who remained loyal sensed a wrongness but could not name it, for rebellion had no precedent. It was a new evil, unimagined, unformed, born from the very heart that had once led them in praise. The sun watched as the light-bearer's radiance turned inward, his once clear voice weaving deception into beauty. Heaven's peace strained under the weight of doubt. The light that once unified now divided, and the first tension of conflict began to echo through eternity. When Lucifer finally looked upon the throne, his heart hardened into decision. His desire had become will, and his will now declared war against divine order. What began as a thought had evolved into ambition, a flame that would soon demand its own dominion. And for the first time in the history of creation, heaven held its breath, for the song of worship had turned into the whisper of revolt. Before we continue, if this content has blessed your life, like, comment, and share. Subscribe to the channel, and if you would like to bless the channel, click the Super Thanks button and leave an offering of any amount or become a member. That way, we can continue investing in research and improvements to bless your life even more. The stillness that had once defined eternity shattered like glass beneath the weight of rebellion. What had begun as whispers in hidden chambers now erupted into a storm of unimaginable fury. The heavens convulsed as Lucifer, no longer the light-bearer but the defier, gathered his followers, those who had traded worship for self-will, and rose against the throne itself. His beauty, once a song of creation, became a banner of defiance. "I will ascend above the stars of God," he cried, his voice thundering through the endless expanse. "I will exalt my throne above the clouds. I will be like the Most High." His words struck the heavens like lightning, and the response came not as thunder, but as the roar of divine justice. From the heart of the throne, Michael, captain of the heavenly hosts, rose with unshaken resolve, his face burning with the reflection of the sun's glory. Around him, legions of loyal angels gathered, armies clothed in light, bearing no fear, for they fought not for dominion, but for truth. Across the celestial plain, the first war in creation ignited. Lightning danced as swords of flame clashed, and voices that once sang in harmony now cried out in battle. The radiance of heaven turned into a storm of blinding brilliance, as if light itself had been divided against its own reflection. Yet, through it all, at the center of the maelstrom, Jesus remained seated upon the throne, unchanging, unthreatened, his gaze piercing through eternity. He did not rise to fight, for his dominion required no defense. By his will alone, the boundaries of rebellion were set. By his word, the line between good and evil was drawn. Where the light stood firm, order endured. Where pride advanced, darkness was born. The very energy of creation seemed to recoil, defining for the first time what it meant to be apart from God. Lucifer fought with desperation, believing he could seize equality through force, but each strike only revealed the futility of defying the infinite. Michael's legions pressed forward, their movements guided not by instinct, but by obedience to the Word who sustained them. Every clash of light and flame echoed a truth. Creation cannot overthrow its creator. Across the heavens, the brilliance of the sun radiated unchanged, sustaining the very reality upon which the war was fought. And though his hand never moved, his power was everywhere, upholding the faithful, restraining the chaos, allowing rebellion to reach its destined end. For this was not merely a battle of force, but a revelation of truth, that pride cannot coexist with holiness, and that freedom misused leads to separation. As the conflict raged, the heavens themselves seemed to mourn. The song of unity was replaced by the cries of those who had chosen darkness. Yet even as light clashed against light and glory contended with glory, the Word remained enthroned, silent and sovereign, his authority unshaken. By his presence alone, the victory was already assured, for no power could stand against the one by whom all powers exist. And when the echoes of battle began to fade, the distinction between loyalty and rebellion had been forever etched into the fabric of eternity. The war that tore through eternity reached its final crescendo as the throne's radiance blazed with unbearable intensity, purging heaven of defilement. Lucifer, once the crown of angelic creation, now stood trembling before the glory he had sought to rival. His beauty, once the adornment of the throne, had become corruption's disguise. His music, once pure, now throbbed with discordant rage. Around him, the loyal hosts of heaven closed ranks, their light pressing back the shadow that had dared to lift itself against the Almighty. No weapon of flesh or steel struck him down, for no such power existed in eternity. His defeat came by the authority of the Word, whose voice resounded through creation with final judgment. The command was not shouted, but spoken with calm finality. The declaration of truth that unraveled the falsehoods he had built. At that word, the once anointed cherub fell. The heavens shuddered as his brilliance fractured into darkness, his name, once sung in joy, now spoken in a dread. He became Satan, the adversary, the accuser of all that is holy. His wings, once woven with light, were seared by his own pride. His radiance collapsed into shadow. His voice turned from harmony to hiss. He plunged through the expanse like a comet torn from its orbit, a burning echo of what had been perfection. "I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven," declared Jesus, his words spanning the ages as testimony and prophecy alike. The hosts watched in solemn awe as the fallen one descended into the abyss, his followers spiraling after him, their light extinguished, their song turned to lament. In that moment, the war ceased. Silence, vast and heavy, filled the heavens where conflict had raged. Order returned, the throne remained unshaken, and the sea of glass once again reflected the unbroken glory of God. Yet even in triumph, the atmosphere of eternity carried a new awareness, something creation had never known. The knowledge that perfection, though radiant, is not immune to corruption when freedom turns inward. The angels bowed once more before the throne, their worship deeper now, their reverence tinged with awe at the mystery of divine patience. For they had witnessed love allow rebellion, power permit, defiance, and holiness reveal mercy even in judgment. Lucifer's fall did not mar the throne's glory. It magnified it, for the light now shone against the memory of darkness. Jesus beheld what none other could, the full arc of this cosmic tragedy, the fall of his most beautiful creation, and the dawn of a new truth written into the fabric of eternity. Freedom had proven its peril, but it had also proven love's depth. For only through choice could worship be true, and only through loss could redemption one day be revealed. The scar of rebellion would remain as a silent witness in the universe, a cosmic wound that spoke of justice and grace intertwined. Heaven's song rose again, not naive but wise, proclaiming that the throne of God stands unshaken, and that every light that remains burns now with understanding, the knowledge that glory is safest not in exaltation, but in surrender. What appeared to the heavenly hosts as tragedy was, in the sight of the eternal Word, the unfolding of a mystery older than time itself. The fall of Lucifer was not a failure of divine foresight, but the unveiling of divine purpose. A revelation that freedom, though dangerous, was necessary for love to exist. In the wake of rebellion, the silence of heaven throbbed with unspoken understanding. The Creator had allowed what He could have prevented, not from indifference, but from intent. For even before the first shadow crossed the stones of fire, the Son had seen the path that lay ahead. He had foreseen that one day, in the fullness of time, He would step into the creation He had made, clothed not in glory but in flesh, to heal the wound pride had opened. Lucifer's fall had not taken Him by surprise. It had been woven into the tapestry of redemption. The heavens now understood what only the Son had known from the beginning, that love's truest power is not domination, but self-giving. The rebellion that shattered the harmony of eternity became the dark canvas upon which grace would one day shine brightest. The Son's silence during the war was no absence of will. It was the restraint of wisdom. For He knew that the moment evil came into existence, redemption must also come into being, and that He alone would bear its cost. From the ashes of defiance, the eternal plan emerged, a creation that would know both good and evil, freedom and consequence, death and life restored. The angels who had remained faithful bowed in awe, perceiving now that justice and mercy were not opposing forces but two reflections of the same divine light. In allowing rebellion, God had revealed the depth of His sovereignty, not a rule enforced by power, but upheld by love that cannot be broken. The Word looked into the expanse of creation, yet unborn, and saw the generations to come, creatures formed of dust and spirit who would carry the same gift that Lucifer had misused, the power to choose. He foresaw their fall, their sorrow, and their redemption. He saw a cross rising where rebellion once began, a place where heaven's justice and heaven's mercy would meet. Every event that would unfold was already held in His understanding. Every failure of creation was already answered by His decision to enter it. The angels who witnessed Lucifer's exile saw judgment, but Jesus saw the outline of salvation. What had been lost in the eyes of heaven was the beginning of restoration in the eyes of eternity. The fall of the brightest angel had not dimmed the glory of God, it had illuminated His love. And as the eternal Word gazed upon the restored heavens, He knew that one day every wound sin would inflict would become the proof of grace, and that through His own descent, all creation would see that even rebellion cannot outpace redemption. Ages beyond counting flowed like silent rivers through eternity until, at last, the plan hidden since before creation began to unfold. The same Word who had formed galaxies with a whisper, who had watched the heavens ignite and the morning stars sing, now chose to step into His own design. The Creator entered His creation, not as fire or storm, but as a child. The throne of glory gave way to a manger of dust, and the voice that had once commanded angels cried with the frailty of an infant. This was the moment all of heaven had awaited, yet could scarcely comprehend, the infinite becoming finite, the eternal Word clothed in flesh. The angels who had seen Lucifer's rebellion now beheld a mystery greater still, the Almighty humbling Himself, not to conquer by power, but to redeem through love. The same Jesus who had watched pride destroy the first light-bearer now walked among those born in its shadow. Humanity, formed in His image yet prone to the same inward turning that had doomed the cherub, became the object of His divine compassion. Every step he took upon the earth was a divine answer to the ancient lie whispered in heaven that greatness could be seized, that equality with God could be grasped. In Jesus, the truth stood revealed. Power lies not in ascent, but in descent, not in claiming glory, but in surrendering it. The Son who had refused to prevent Lucifer's rebellion now confronted its consequence firsthand, dwelling among a race wounded by the same pride. He healed the sick, forgave the sinful, and lifted the broken, revealing that the true reflection of divine power was mercy. When tempted in the wilderness by the same adversary he had once cast down, Jesus faced the echo of that first rebellion. "If you are the Son of God," the fallen one taunted, offering kingdoms and crowns, authority and adoration, the very delusions that had ruined him. But the Word made flesh answered with the same truth that had sustained heaven: obedience. "It is written," he said, and by those words he restored what pride had destroyed. Throughout his life, he chose the path Lucifer had rejected. He served where he could have ruled, remained silent, where he could have commanded, knelt to wash the feet of those who would soon betray him. Every act of humility became a declaration that divine strength is found in love's restraint. When he carried the cross, bearing the weight of creation's corruption, he carried the consequence of the freedom he had once given. And when he hung upon it, the lie of Lucifer died beneath the truth of the Lamb. The heavens, which had once trembled at rebellion, now beheld surrender exalted. The Creator who became creation proved that the throne is never higher than when it stoops to redeem. Through Jesus, the universe finally understood the victory of God was never in domination, but in the humility that conquers pride itself. And so, as the ages complete their circle, the story returns to its beginning. Before the throne that has never been shaken, never diminished, though the universe itself has trembled around it. The same heavens that once thundered with rebellion now resound with a song of restoration, vast and pure, rising from countless voices redeemed by the one they praise. "Worthy is the Lamb who was slain," they cry, their anthem filling every corner of creation, echoing across realms seen and unseen. The angels who once bore swords of fire now lift harps of gold, their former battle cry transformed into worship. The light that Lucifer once twisted to glorify himself now streams undivided from the face of the sun, bathing all of existence in peace that cannot fade. The rebellion that began with pride has ended with humility enthroned, for the Word who humbled himself to death now reigns in glory unchallenged. The scar left by sin has not been erased but transfigured. It glows now as the mark of victory, proof that even darkness can be woven into light when held in the hands of the Eternal. The Lamb stands at the center of the throne, his wounds radiant like stars. They are no longer symbols of suffering, but of sovereignty. Around him, the redeemed angels, elders, and the children of dust made holy cast down their crowns, confessing that all glory, all wisdom, all power belong to him alone. And the Son, who once watched in silence as pride tore heaven apart, now reigns as the revealed wisdom of God. What seemed in ancient days an absence was in truth his eternal presence. What appeared to be delay was divine design. He was never distant from Lucifer's fall. He was its witness, its boundary, and its ultimate answer. Through him, rebellion became revelation. Through his love, destruction became the doorway to renewal. The universe now understands what it could not at the dawn of creation, that freedom without love brings ruin, but love that freely surrenders brings eternity's peace. The Father's glory and the Son's humility stand forever united, the two sides of one infinite truth. And as eternity unfolds once more, unshadowed and unmarred, every being beholds the wisdom written into the very structure of existence. The mystery that the Creator's silence was salvation in waiting, and that the Lamb's surrender was the final victory. The light-bearer had fallen trying to ascend, but the true light descended to rise higher than all. Thus the ages close not with conquest, but with communion. The Word through whom all things were made now dwells with those he has redeemed, and the song that began before time continues without end. Blessing and honor and glory and power be to him who sits upon the throne and to the Lamb forever. Eternity stands restored, creation rests in harmony, and at the heart of all things reigns the same Son who was there from the beginning, unchanging, triumphant, and eternally adored.